I built my perfect life on a secret for 2 years. Then my future mother-in-law exposed her ugly truth in a language she never knew I understood. Liam and I had been together for 2 years, and for 730 perfect days, I had been living a lie. Not a huge, scandalous lie, but a lie of omission that had grown from a tiny seed of anxiety into a towering, thorny wall between a part of me and the man I was going to marry. The lie was simple. He had no idea I could speak Arabic. Fluent, native-tongue Arabic. The language my Lebanese mother whispered to me in the cradle. The language of our boisterous family dinners. The language that felt like home. It started innocently enough. On our third date, we were watching a movie and a character started yelling in Arabic. Liam chuckled uncomfortably and said, "God, that language always sounds so aggressive, doesn't it?" My blood ran cold. It wasn't malicious, just a thoughtless, stereotypical comment from a guy raised in suburban Connecticut, a guy whose entire world was apple pie and classic rock. But in that moment, I made a split-second decision. I just smiled weakly and said, "I guess so." And that was it. The door to my heritage, my culture, a massive part of who I am, slammed shut and I locked it from the inside. Over time, it became easier to maintain the fiction. My last name, Nasser, was just interesting and unique to him. My slightly darker complexion and features were chalked up to some distant Italian ancestor I invented on the spot. I told him my mother passed away when I was young, which was true, but I conveniently left out the part where she filled our home with the scent of za'atar and the sound of Fairuz's music. Liam loved me, the curated version of me I presented, the Sarah who was just an all-American girl with a cool name, and I loved him so much it terrified me. The thought of his face changing, of that casual discomfort from our third date returning, but this time directed at me, I couldn't bear it. So when he proposed and I tearfully said yes, the lie cemented itself. This was my life now, and part of that life was the inevitable, dreaded meet the parents dinner. "You're going to love them," Liam promised, squeezing my hand as we pulled into the driveway of a pristine colonial house. "And they're going to adore you." My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My palms were slick with sweat. I had rehearsed my backstory 1,000 times. I was ready for the standard questions, but you can't prepare for everything. His mother, Carol, was exactly what I expected. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a crisp white blouse, and a smile that was technically perfect, but didn't quite reach her cold, assessing blue eyes. She appraised me from head to toe in a single swift glance as she hugged me. It felt less like an embrace and more like she was checking for structural flaws. "It is so wonderful to finally meet the woman who has stolen our son's heart," she said, her voice smooth as polished marble. Dinner was a minefield of polite inquiries. His father, a quiet man named Robert, asked about my job in marketing. Carol, however, was more pointed. "Nassar," she mused, swirling the wine in her glass. "That's French, isn't it?" "Something like that," I mumbled, my rehearsed line. "My father's side is a mix of European odds and ends." "I see," she said, her gaze lingering on me for a fraction of a second too long. The conversation drifted, and I started to relax. Maybe I had been paranoid. Maybe this was all in my head. Liam was regaling his parents with a funny story about our recent vacation, and I felt a wave of love for him so intense it almost hurt. This was my future, his family, this house, this life. I just had to keep that one door locked forever. Then, As Liam and his dad started clearing the main course plates to bring out dessert, Carol's phone, which was sitting on the polished mahogany table, buzzed. She glanced at the screen and a flicker of annoyance crossed her perfect features. "Excuse me for just a moment," she said to me, her smile back in place. "I have to take this. My sister, she's a bit of a drama queen." She answered the phone, turning away from me slightly as if for privacy. She kept her voice low, a polite murmur. I tried not to listen, focusing on the intricate patterns on the wallpaper, but I couldn't help but overhear snippets. It sounded like she was arguing with someone, her voice growing tense. And then the language changed. The polite English murmur was gone, replaced by a torrent of harsh, clipped words that I knew as well as my own name. It was Arabic. My stomach did a complete backflip. Carol, the picture of wasp perfection, was speaking fluent, angry Arabic into her phone. She was pacing now, her back to me. "La la la ma femiti, hue biecha was wade amrikia." No, you don't understand. He's marrying an American girl." My mind was reeling, trying to process the sheer impossibility of what I was hearing. Then came the words that stopped my heart cold. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper, dripping with a disgust so profound it made my skin crawl. "Aywa, wadewaska metal kelel Arab, bas hiya mambien alea, hadelam hem." Yes, a dirty one like all the Arabs. But at least she doesn't look it. That's what's important. She hung up the phone, placed it face down on the table, and that icy smile returned as she turned to face me. "More wine, dear?" she asked, as if she hadn't just revealed herself to be a monster. And she had no idea, absolutely no idea, that I had understood every single hateful word. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The cheerful chatter of Liam and his father returning from the kitchen, sounding distorted and distant, like a radio playing in another room. I stared at Carol, at her perfectly manicured hands, at the polite, empty smile plastered on her face, and saw a completely different person. The polished veneer of the suburban matriarch had cracked, and I had seen the ugliness teeming underneath. "Of course," I managed to say, my voice a strangled whisper. My hand trembled as I reached for my own wine glass. "Thank you." She topped it off, her movements graceful and unhurried. Liam set a plate of apple pie with a perfect scoop of vanilla ice cream in front of me. "Mom's famous apple pie," he said, beaming. "You're in for a treat." A treat. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble in my chest, and I had to physically bite the inside of my cheek to keep it from escaping. A dirty one. The words echoed in my head, a vicious, looping soundtrack to this picture-perfect family scene. "Wad waska metel kel el Arab." She had said it with such casual venom, the same way someone might complain about the weather. It wasn't just a comment, it was a deeply ingrained belief. And the most sickening part? The qualifier. "Bas hiye mam bien alea." But at least she doesn't look it. My curated, palatable American appearance was my only saving grace in her eyes. It was the reason I was deemed acceptable enough to sit at her mahogany table and eat her famous apple pie. "Everything okay, honey?" Liam asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "You look a little pale." "Just a bit overwhelmed, I think," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it would shatter my face. "Your parents are just lovely." Carol let out a delicate laugh. "Oh, stop it, you," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "We're just so thrilled for you both. It's not every day our son brings home such a wonderful, well-mannered girl. So refreshing." every word was a veiled insult, a coded message I was now terrifyingly fluent in. Wonderful meant not like the others. Well-mannered meant you know your place. Refreshing meant not what I expected, not what I feared. My lie, the one I had constructed out of fear, had become my shield, but it was also my cage. I had successfully presented myself as the exact type of American girl she wanted for her son, and in doing so had walked directly into the lion's den. I spent the rest of the evening in a state of hyper-awareness. Every seemingly innocent question from Carol felt like a trap. When she asked about my childhood, I gave her the sanitized version, a story of scraped knees and school plays, carefully editing out the memories of my Tita, grandmother, teaching me how to roll grape leaves, her wrinkled hands moving with an ancient, practiced grace. When she commented on my beautiful tan, I just laughed and mentioned a recent trip to the beach, not the olive skin I inherited from a long line of Lebanese women. Liam was oblivious, holding my hand under the table, rubbing his thumb over my knuckles. He thought the evening was a roaring success. He kept catching my eye and winking, a goofy, love-struck grin on his face. He had no idea he was sitting between the woman he loved and the woman who despised everything I truly was. He was the prize in a war he didn't even know was being fought. As we were getting ready to leave, standing in the foyer and putting on our coats, Carol came over and placed a cold, dry hand on my arm. "Sarah," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential tone, "I just want you to know I was a little worried, I'll admit. When Liam told me your last name, Nassar, it's a bit ethnic." I froze, my blood running cold again. Here it was. "But you," she continued, her blue eyes boring into mine, "you are just a delight. So normal. You've really assimilated beautifully." Assimilated. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and foul. Assimilated from what? From the dirty thing she thought I was? The rage I had been suppressing all night surged, hot and blinding. I opened my mouth. The Arabic words. The true, unfiltered me, sitting on the tip of my tongue, ready to detonate this entire fragile charade. But before I could speak, she smiled that razor-thin smile again. "And honestly," she said, patting my arm before releasing me, "it's a relief. It's so much easier for everyone when you don't have to struggle with those complicated, guttural pronunciations. Liam deserves a simple life, don't you think?" She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, shaking with a fury so profound I could barely breathe. It wasn't just a general hatred of Arabs anymore. This was a direct threat. Stay in your lane. Stay American, or else. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and silence. Liam chattered on about how well it went, how his mom totally loved me. Each cheerful word was like a needle prick to my raw nerves. I couldn't form a sentence. My mind was a chaotic storm of Carol's venomous whisper, her condescending pats, her chilling final warning. Liam deserves a simple life. She was drawing a battle line, and I was on the wrong side of it. Back at our apartment, Liam finally noticed my silence. "Hey, you've been quiet all the way home. Did something happen? Did my mom say something?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and the lie I had been telling for 2 years felt like a physical weight in my throat, choking me. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't marry into a family where I had to amputate a part of my soul to be considered acceptable. I couldn't spend the rest of my life looking at my children and hiding their heritage from their own grandmother. The fear that had kept me silent was suddenly dwarfed by the absolute certainty that living this lie would be a fate worse than losing him. I took a deep breath. "Liam, We need to talk, and you need to just listen until I'm finished." His smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion and concern. He sat on the sofa, his hands on his knees, giving me his full attention. And so, the dam broke. I told him everything. I started with our third date, with his casual comment that had planted the seed of fear. I told him about my Lebanese mother, about the rich, beautiful language she gave me, about the family gatherings filled with laughter and food he'd never heard of. I explained how the lie had started small, but had grown into a monster I couldn't control. Then, I told him about tonight. I recounted the phone call, translating every hateful word Carol had said. I watched his face shift from confusion to disbelief, then to a dawning, horrified understanding. When I repeated her final comments to me in the foyer, the ones about my ethnic name and how I'd assimilated beautifully, a muscle in his jaw clenched. He looked sick. She said that?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "She said you were dirty?" I simply nodded, tears finally starting to well in my eyes. She said it in Arabic, Liam. She had no idea I understood. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes unfocused as he processed the sheer scale of the deception mine and his mother's. I held my breath, bracing for the fallout. This was it, the moment he would either see me or see the lie. Finally, he looked up, and the expression in his eyes wasn't anger or disgust. It was a deep, gut-wrenching shame. "Sarah, I am so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "that I ever made you feel like you had to hide that my stupid, ignorant comment made you feel unsafe. And my mother, what she said, there is no excuse. None." He stood up, paced the room once, then came back and knelt in front of me, taking both of my hands in his. "I don't care about a simple life," he said, his gaze intense and unwavering. "I care about an honest one. With you. All of you." Relief washed over me so powerfully, my knees felt weak. But I knew this wasn't over. A simple apology wouldn't erase the poison his mother had injected into our lives. The next day, Liam called his parents and told them we were coming over, that there was something we needed to discuss as a family. The drive back to that pristine, colonial house felt completely different. This time I wasn't a frightened imposter. I was just me. We sat in the same formal living room. Carol had a bright, expectant look on her face, likely assuming we were coming to announce a wedding date. Liam didn't waste any time. "Mom, Dad," he began, his voice steady and firm, "Sarah and I have something we need to tell you, specifically something Sarah needs to tell you." He squeezed my hand. I turned my gaze directly to Carol. "Ana Beki Arabi," I said, my voice clear and ringing in the quiet room. "I speak Arabic." Carol's perfectly made-up face went slack. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving 2 bright spots of rouge. Her eyes widened in pure, unadulterated shock. "Smait kel shimbari," I continued, letting the language I had hidden for so long flow freely. "Smait l'kalim l'wasach an l'Arab. Wismayit kif hadartik, hekiti ani." I heard everything yesterday. I heard the dirty talk about Arabs, and I heard how you spoke about me. Robert, his father, was looking back and forth between us in total confusion. But Carol understood perfectly. A flicker of panic crossed her face, quickly replaced by a sneer. Liam stepped in, his voice cold as ice. "She understood you, Mom. She understood you calling her a dirty Arab on the phone. She understood you telling her she'd assimilated beautifully because she didn't seem too ethnic for your taste." The silence in the room was absolute. Carol opened and closed her mouth like a fish, but no sound came out. She had been exposed, her ugly prejudice laid bare on the Persian rug. "We're leaving," Liam said, standing up and pulling me with him. "And until you can look at the woman I love and see her for who she is, all of her, and not just some caricature you've invented in your head, we're done." He looked at his mother, his expression one of profound disappointment. "And just so we're clear, my life was never going to be simple. It was going to be rich and full and beautiful, because she was going to be in it. It's a shame you'll be missing out." We walked out of that house, leaving the ruins of their perfect world behind us. As we got into the car, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in 2 years. I turned to Liam, my heart overflowing. He smiled, a real, genuine smile. "So," he said, taking my hand, "teach me something. How do you say 'I love you' in Arabic?" "Ana bahibak," I whispered. "Ana bahibak," he repeated, stumbling a little over the sounds. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was everything.